Hello everyone, we're back with another string review and playtest, and today we're going to be talking about Solinco Hyper G, a string that I'm sure a lot of you have heard a lot of great things about, and I'm pretty much here just to confirm those things. The fact that I bought a reel of this string should tell you all you need to know. This is history in the making in that this is the first ever time I have a string where I feel like you have to go out and try this if you use polyester strings. So I had a friend who kind of tipped me off to this. So he's a better player than me. I already had some sets of Hyper G sitting around. Like if you know my stringing room, there's like 100 sets of string that I'm meaning to review. Of course, I'm never going to get to probably half of them, but there's a huge pile of single sets of string. And he keeps telling me, you got to try this string. You got to try this string. It's like the greatest thing ever. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get to it. And so eventually, after he whooped my butt, which he usually does, I'm like, I'm going to put Hyper G in the racket. And I did. And I have to say it's catapulted to the top of my polyester power rankings. And before Hyper G, if I had a choice, if I had like $1 million and money wasn't an object, I would probably go with Luxilon Alu Power. It's an expensive string and it only plays good for about 2 or 3 hours, but I love those 2 or 3 hours with that string. I love the crispness, I love the pop, I love the feel. But the downside is there's not quite enough control for me with that string, meaning that I'll just fly some balls long, even when I kind of hit them as cleanly as I can. With this string, more of those balls go in, and the pop and the crispness and the feel of it, I still really like. Some people have claimed that this string feels boardy. In my Aero Pro Drive, that wasn't the case, but I know for a lot of people, the string might feel a little bit too boardy based on the frame that they're using. If you're using one of the more modern, one of the newer kind of stiffer frames, that's the way all the new racket design's going for some reason. It's probably better on the arm. Then you may not like this as much. But for me, in something that's very plush, like the Aero Pro, the 2013 model, I really love that combination. So we don't have to talk too much about this string other than if you're a polyester user and you haven't tried it, go out and try it. So I'll kind of give you where this string sits for me, why I like it so much, and then hopefully if you do use polyesters, you might go out and give it a try. Like I said, the pop on Alu Power is what I love so much about that, but the amount of time you can play with it, that 2 or 3 hours before it bottoms off, not really a worthwhile investment for someone like me. There's a reason why tons of pros use it. Well, the Alu Power I'm talking about, and the reason is they can restring all the time, so it's not so much of an issue for them. But if you're like me or you or anybody else, you got to get a little more bang for your buck. This one to me, about 8 hours approximately before I really started to notice that bottom off and I start flying balls long and it just doesn't feel as nice. That was about where I got with Hyper G. I've also been playing with Torbite, also from Solinco. That one's a little bit stiffer than Hyper G, and I'd say where it separates itself from Hyper G is that you can play with it for a bit longer. You don't notice that you don't notice that drop off quite as quickly, but it is stiffer. It is a little harder on the arm. Speaking of harder on the arm, the other string I used to use when I did play competitively was Babolat Revenge, and that thing is very aggressive on the arm. They don't even make it anymore. I had tons of sets of that from when it was like being discontinued, and the feel on that, the pop on that was nowhere near as crisp as it is with Hyper G. So for me, Hyper G kind of exists in the middle, which for my game is fantastic. It feels really nice on serve. You notice a lot of those balls going in that you normally think are probably going to fly long. It's relatively comfortable, 8 or 9 hours of play. It really is a phenomenal string. And I'm not the first person to have said this. Where I teach indoors, it seems like every week I'm seeing more people on contract time, more people coming in to play on spot time. I'm seeing that neon green color, and I'm only assuming that it's Hyper G. I know there's a couple more strings like that, but for the stringers in this area anyway, I doubt they're carrying those other strings. So more than likely it is Hyper G. At $12 a set, it's a little bit high, but for the increased playability you get with it, definitely a fan of this string. And as you can see, I bought a reel of it, which is extremely rare for me to do. So anyway, if you are a polyester player, give this a shot. If you're not a polyester player, I wouldn't necessarily even say you need to use this as like a hybrid. So in my mom's racket, I have like Babolat VS natural gut, and I decide to cross it by Hyper G, where in the past I'd usually cross it by just like a cheaper, round, slick kind of poly. Usually it was Black Magic from Genesis. And I played with it a little bit. I didn't notice a huge uptick in performance from when it was crossed with Black Magic. And neither did my mom. So I don't really know if using this as a cross string is going to make a big difference in a hybrid. Obviously, you would want to try this as a main with some kind of multi-filament, see how that performs for you. I'm sure it would be good. And if you are somebody who's using a multi-filament, a stiffer one, and you're considering making the jump to a polyester, definitely give this one a shot. I mean, I feel like it is, without a doubt, for me, my favorite polyester string that I've ever used. So history in the making here on this channel. I don't say that lightly. Honestly, I don't, but this is a game changer string, at least for my game and how I play. I don't give out of 10 ratings for that very reason. You never know how it's going to perform in your racket with your game, but for me, it really does do the job. So definitely give this one a shot. Thanks so much for watching, and you'll see me again with another string review, hopefully relatively soon. Take it easy.